Welcome to the Therapist Burnout Podcast, episode 89. Almost at 90, guys. So today, therapist, I am talking to you a little bit about my Nana, actually, who passed away maybe 10 years ago, and why work-life balance is basically bullshit. We're gonna tackle that. And I'm going to introduce a new concept that I'm calling the caring quotient. It's something that I've talked about before on the podcast, but I'm like, I am naming something and calling it out. And off the back, I think of episode 88, I'm talking a little bit more about some layers that I didn't discuss on the podcast and things that came out as I was writing about it this week. So my Nana, I'm just going to back up and talk to you a little bit about my Nana's fried chicken. So my Nana used to make this fried chicken. My brother knows how to make it, and I swear that I need to have a session with him where we're just frying chicken so I can learn how to make it. I'm from the South. Virginia is where I grew up. She would make it was like a flour base of her fried chicken, and she would fry the chicken, but there would also be some of the breading that she would just put in the fryer, and we would call that the crunch. And all of us cousins and of course my parents, my dad would jump up and look for the crunch to eat the crunch. And it was just something that we all looked forward to. We loved her fried chicken. We always wanted it. And I just remember her saying, "This is the last time I'm frying chicken. This is it." Every single time she would tell us this is the last time that she's frying chicken. And it never was the last time until it was the last time, which I don't know when that time was, but definitely there was a last time that she fried chicken because she's no longer with us. And it had me think about caregiving. So in episode 88, I talked about the layers of therapist burnout, which are many, but also I think we fail to consider our caregiving as part of our quotient for caring. So that's what I'm going to start out by talking about. And it just had me think of her because I think she was trying to tell everybody that frying chicken was a lot of work. I remember her having this kitchen stool. That's what she called it. It was a kitchen stool that we used to get up on to and use as we were younger children. I don't even know where you buy such a kitchen stool, but it was like a step ladder chair. Then she would sit in, and she would sit in front of the stove with oil frying and just be doing fried chicken for I don't even know how long it would take her, hours probably, for like the whole process of making the fried chicken, cleaning up the fried chicken, everyone eating the fried chicken and being in the kitchen wanting the crunch. So all of those things took an exorbitant amount of time for her. And everyone laughed at her, telling us it's the last time for fried chicken. She even had a sign in her kitchen that says the kitchen is closed. And I really identify that with that now because I didn't realize how much time I'm in the kitchen as a mother, cooking and cleaning and providing food for children is a lot of the things that I do when I am not working or doing this podcast. So, I mean, it has me think of this. I know we always hear in the ethers, like, we got to make sure we maintain a good work life balance. And I thought that was a thing before I burnt all the way out. I really did think it was a thing. We're told to balance everything neatly. Like there is a box for working, for home life, and we have to kind of keep those things perfectly balanced. And it had me think of this advertisement for one of these tech companies, and it had a person logging onto their telehealth session doing yoga, like some kind of crazy yoga pose while they were turning their laptop on to get ready for their therapist. And I think it's this juxtaposition we're in life in these modern days that there are no neat boxes. Work and life for therapists, caring especially bleeds in from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed. We wake up, we answer emails, we have kids. For me, I have a middle schooler now and an elementary school student. So I am getting kids ready some mornings for 2 hours to get ready for school and trying to get myself ready. I think this balance also is never complete. So in work-life balance, I think in our minds, we're taught in a way that it's something that is to be achieved. Like we are trying to reach some pinnacle of work-life balance when life and work will be balanced. And I think my perspective of leaving the work of doing therapy And having a private practice has taught me that this is a journey I will continuously be on because there will be times where work takes an extreme focus, where it starts to bleed into my personal or off times. There are times, like in my schooling, where I was writing my dissertation that took a lot of my focus and my personal time. Although nothing takes as much time of your personal time than children, in my personal experience. And I think rightfully so, there's times in our lives when we have someone who's ill, when we have become a parent, if you're a parent, when we become a caregiver, if we're a caregiver. I think I have that caregiving lens, which I'll talk about in just a minute. I just want us to think therapy really isn't just a job. Mental health work, even if you're not doing therapy full time now, it's personal, it's emotional, it impacts your whole being, your whole self. And how can it not? It is caring, it is heart work, it is soul work that we do. So, my journey into caregiving, everything shifted overnight. I've told this story many times on this podcast, but there might be some of you that are new to me. And what I have found actually with my favorite podcasters is I love hearing their stories again and again. But if someone gets tired of it, then they'll just tell me. And then I'll be like, okay, well, maybe I'm not the right podcaster for you anymore. I'm joking. But when I became a mom, my son had heart surgery on day 5, and it propelled me into postpartum anxiety, and I could not go back to work. I did not go back to work. I could not leave that baby after he left the hospital after 10 days when he had major heart surgery. I had that time, maybe a couple months after that experience, and I was experiencing debilitating anxiety. I was worried that he would not wake up when he went to sleep. He is fine, by the way. There's not a traumatic ending to what happened. He's doing fine. 12 years old. I just celebrated that birthday with him last week. And so that little heart baby is doing great. At that time, I didn't know that as a new mother. My nervous system was in constant threat. I did not know in my brain and body that he would survive. I think carrying that as a new mother became really, really difficult for me. So much so that I just could not go back to work. And clinically, I had the experience of working with survivors of brain injury, and I kind of fell into how this happened. I remember coming on postdoc, and my supervisor, he saw a couple together, and he told me that had been seeing this couple together for years, and he thought they were ready for discharge, but they just found it really helpful to continue to come in. And I asked him at the time if that's common. Do spouses or significant others or partners come into the sessions with the clients who had the brain injury? And he frequently said yes. They really struggle with the stress of caregiving. Many of the people that are caring for the individual with a brain injury benefited from the therapy. So I took that to heart. And many times when I would see someone with a brain injury, that was my specialty when I was in clinical practice, I would see them with their partner. And what I noticed is they were drowning in their caregiving, if not as much as my client with the brain injury. They needed their own support. They needed their own time to manage what was coming up. A lot of times, their partners or loved one couldn't drive. Their personality had changed. They were dealing with extreme depression. They were very different from the person that they either were partnered with or different from the family member that they were used to. And their caregiving load was heavy, and very quickly it became very heavy. I think they needed to hear the things that I was saying. They needed the support of the therapy just as much as their loved one. And sometimes my client, the client with the brain injury, would tell me, maybe part of the session you just talk to them because I'm understanding what I need to do for my recovery, for my depression associated with this injury, but they aren't understanding what I need. And I need some space, or I need whatever they needed. They just felt like their loved one needed more support. And I think I just want to segue here into kind of just a generational and cultural context right now. I've talked so many times about how we are spending more time in doing work. So we're spending more time on screens, more time actually working on our jobs because of the advent of smartphones. And so because of that, our brains are taxed. I see this level of cognitive burnout, which I talked about many times in the podcast, of being very similar to what I saw in brain injury survivors, where they are just cognitively overloaded and shutting down. I see it as well working in school psychology for kiddos that are on the spectrum, for kids who have ADHD, and just struggling with the cognitive demands of school and needing to titrate that information or reduce that information that they do. So, bring up items on the page. So, if you're seeing the video, like I would cover parts of this. So, you're not inputting so much information. And I think about all the time, how do we reduce the inputs? That is something I've talked with survivors for nearly 15 years. You need to reduce the inputs. That could be your screens, that can be the amount of things that you're doing, and we always want to look at that. Can I let something go? Because modern life continues to ask more and more of us. With that, in the context of caregiving for parents specifically, when I read Anxious Generation, this specific statistic really stood out to me and in my own parenting kind of slapped me in the face. I know there's like memes about the moms in the 80s drinking tab and reading their Cosmos. That I think they weren't lying. This is from the book Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. If you have not read that book, even if you're not a parent, it is really helpful if you are around teens or children, or even for just yourself to notice the changes that have happened at the advent of the smartphone. The statistics they cite there are that mothering time has increased 50%. So from about 10 hours in like 1990 to 20 hours in the early 2000s or 2010s. I'll have to look. I just have notes here, but you can look at the book and look that up. Father's time has also increased. So that used to be 4 hours and how it has increased to 8 hours. I'm sure there is a lot of variance between what typical mothers and fathers do with regard to child rearing and child care. So certainly take that with a grain of salt. On the whole, though, however, historically, and we see that trend continue, that women, and the majority of the people that listen to this are women, we are bearing the brunt of that mothering time. The trends have been that children play together less. So kids are getting together less in neighborhoods, playing on their own, and parents are expected to supervise more. Jonathan Haidt talks a lot about the experience now in parenthood of safetyism. So we need to make sure kids are quote unquote safe. And we're not letting them play freely like we used to in previous generations because culturally we're perceiving that our kids aren't safe. And so a lot of times they're given a screen, which appears to be more safe, which actually is detrimental to their health. So, great book. I recommend it for you to look at that. In the pandemic, I certainly had the experience of having zero balance. Having zero counterbalance is how I like to think of it better. I didn't have any daycare. There was no school for 6 months. I don't have other types of supports here in my area. A lot of us were in this situation. We were trying to figure out what to do with our kids, get online with school. I had a kindergartner, so trying to teach someone how to read when I'm not a teacher and I'm not a great one for little ones. Oh my gosh. I think a lot of us and our caring quotient was off the charts. We're trying to work. We're trying to do caring, especially for therapists, virtually online. I think I'd done like one or two virtual sessions previous to 2020, and then having all of that online. And the screen fatigue for me was real. I did not have anything left to give. It was not a good situation for me. So, just introducing this concept of the caring quotient. I am calling the caring quotient as the total emotional, physical, and mental energy you spend on caregiving inside and outside of work. That can be your therapy caseload, your parenting, the invisible household labor, your true caring quotient. And if we are stretched too much, we can no longer care. And I've seen this in caregivers. I've seen this in parents. I've seen this in therapists. It is not unique to therapists, but I think it's we see this especially in caregiving fields because when we have too much output of caring, we aren't able to do that anymore. And so I think the better thing to consider is counterbalance. So for every bit of caring that we do, we need to counterbalance those inputs with something else, something I would do with my survivors. So oftentimes, if they would go to work, maybe they worked for 4 hours, someone that was probably later in their injury. Let's say initially with an injury, someone started back to work 1 or 2 hours a day and then saw how that felt for them. Maybe that 1 to 2 hours required for them in their recovery 4 to 5 hours to recover from that time. So they needed to lay down, they needed to really rest, they needed fewer inputs throughout the day, and slowly they would increase that time. Now, it's different. I'm not trying to make a one-to-one comparison with brain injury recovery and burnout, or when you have given way too much and your caring quotient is off the charts. You can no longer care. But I like to think about you need some time for renewal. You need some rest. You need some downtime to be able to absorb the caring you just did or the output you just gave. And I think a lot of times remembering when I did those 7 hours of therapy days that I have done before, 8-hour therapy days in my training days. And I think therapists aren't immune to that. There's times where we have done that. We have to do that sometimes when we're coming back from vacation or what have you, or if that's just your normal. At the end of the day, I did not have a lot left in the tank at all for my kids, for my spouse. Often did not want to talk very much. And I think that's in the realm of normal. Most therapists have that experience where they feel pretty depleted at the end of a long therapy day or a difficult therapy day. And I just think that's normal. And having renewing experiences throughout the day is the best bet. So, spacing sessions if you can, taking walks, having times that really feel renewing to you emotionally, physically, spiritually, that you do have a sense of renewal from the work that you're doing. And even for me now, my work isn't as emotional working in school psychology, but I think through the cognitive demands of my job and needing to do the walks, needing to do, calls with friends, get in planning the social time, structuring your rest, like I talk about in my framework of how to do this work for yourself so you aren't giving from a constant place of depletion. So I just want to gently ask you, what season are you in, my dear therapist? What is your caring quotient? Is it feeling maxed out? Are you feeling like you have nothing left to give? Do your emotions feel suppressed? For me, being a therapist for a long time, I did not have the range of emotions that I normally had. And I didn't notice that until maybe a year out of doing therapy work where I notice emotion coming up again when I would hear difficult things. And that is important to notice that you don't have the range of emotions, that you don't have the responses you want to have for your loved ones. So I just have you sit with this and think about, are there things you can put in, or are there major changes that need to happen into your schedule, into your days to have the counterbalance that would afford you the life that you want? All right. I will talk with you next month because it will be October. And it's going to be the focus of October is going to be practice closure. So listen up more for that. And also, I think the themes are going to align if people want to leave the field or leave their current job. So that is the focus for October. I'm excited about it. And I know that sounds weird in some way, but I do get excited when people end things because you're making room for the things that will give you life. And that's what I get excited about. So I will talk with you next week. Take care.